Welcome! Coming up, we have a lucky escape from the tsunami caused by the Tongan volcanic eruption. And I built a custom boom bracket to support the mainsail. Before I get into the mainsail holding bracket, I just want to let you know that I had a bit of an accident. On Christmas Day, I came down to get the boat ready to go sailing, and I was on the jetty. I was pulling on the rope and it came off the boat, and I flew backwards and landed in the water. Tried to grab the jetty with my arm, and as soon as I hit the water I could feel pain. And anyway, I was in the water. The water's pretty yucky here. Look, a brown salmon! And the pain was quite intense, and I got back onto the boat. I sat down here and I took my shirt off and I looked at my shoulder, and usually it's rounded like this. I could see the shoulder bones sticking out, and then there was just like nothing. It just went straight down. I thought I'd ripped the muscle off my bone, and that would have been extremely serious. Long injury that would be. Anyway, I called up my brother-in-law. He came down and picked me up, took me to the hospital, and it turned out to be a dislocated shoulder. They put me in general anesthetic and put it back together, and it's been like 8 days now, and I've got pretty good movement with it. I can do light duties. The doctor said to leave it in a sling for 3 weeks, but after 2 days that was enough of that, and hopefully I'll be back to normal quickly. That's enough of my clumsy accident. We're going to talk about lazy jacks. Lazy jacks are those ropes here that come down, and you can see them attached. So when the sail comes down, it doesn't end up all over the deck. It sort of contains it inside the bag, and the lazy jack's guided in there. And then at the end of the day, you can just zip up your bag, keeps it out of the sun. It's a really good system, but I want to change it. There are some issues with it, and that's hoisting, and the other one I found was chafe from the blocks onto the sail doing a long haul. I don't like it when these at the batten ends get caught on these ropes, these lazy jack ropes, when you're hoisting the sail. Now if you're lifting the sail from the mast, you had a winch here. Quite often people rig it up like that. It's not such a big deal because you're right next to the sail. You can pull it down easy enough. So all my halyards come back here. So I'm here pulling up the mainsail, and it gets caught on the lazy jack, and straight away I let it off, and the mainsail won't come down by itself, especially in the beginning part of it, the early part of the mainsail haul. So that way I have to come up here, go up to the mast, try and pull it down, then come back here and then try and guide it past again. So the whole idea is I put this bracket on to hold the mainsail, which will do a much better job than the lazy jacks, because you can see it's got a bit of water in there now because it rained, but it can't hold the weight, and it just bellies over the side. And if I made the lazy jack super tight, might be able to lift it a bit. But anyway, the whole idea is this bracket will hold the mainsail up nicely above the boom. We'll see. I'm not 100%. Maybe I might be a bit of a hybrid, but if I have this boom bracket, I'm hoping that the sail will fall into that bracket, and I won't need the lazy jacks for lowering the sail. Hoisting the sail without the lazy jacks will be a dream. I won't have to worry about it. It can even be in the middle of the ocean, rolling around, and I can hoist the sail. Lowering it into this bracket will be the real test. So let's see what happens. This is the jig for the welding of the bracket for the boom. These will be welded on like this, like that, and then all the rest along there. We weld it along, and then these rails that go along the top. Yeah. Sanjeev came by to TIG weld all the pieces together. I used 1.5 inch for the uprights and 1 inch for the top rail. Some heat to bend the ends so there wouldn't be any spring when I installed it. I bent the top rail with a forked tree, but I didn't film it. Good thing about TIG, it's nice and neat and you don't need much grinding to the welds. So a bit of painting, a few coats of paint, and then I strapped it to the top of the car and off to the yacht club. So I tied the bracket in position and drilled and pop riveted. I used stainless steel rivets. They are really hard work, and I broke 2 rivet guns. Really interesting what happened yesterday, and that was in Tonga. There was an enormous eruption, a volcanic eruption, and it was apparently one of the biggest ever. It really blew up and caused a tsunami that affected Tonga and all the islands in the region. Yeah, I could hear the big explosion sounds. They went on for quite a while. One friend called me up saying that his windows were shaking for 15 minutes. So we didn't know what it was.
Oh, fuck! Holy shit!
Just wild. You see the moment that underwater volcano erupted in the Pacific Ocean, sending a massive plume of ash mushrooming into the air. It caused the equivalent of a 5.8 magnitude earthquake. That violent eruption prompted tsunami advisories all the way as far as Hawaii, Alaska, and of course here in the U.S. Pacific coast.
Now, I know the outer islands copped it worse, but it did make it here. And apparently, from what I hear, there was a surge coming through the marina and like whirlpools and water cascading. But luckily nothing happened to the boat. I wasn't here because I didn't know about it. I heard the explosion, but I really didn't know what it was. And it only took like an hour and a half after that before the tsunami hit here, 600 kilometers away. And there was no way of knowing it was going to happen. There was no alarms, warnings.
Yeah, my boat is anchored perhaps 150 meters off the mouth of the entrance to the yacht club. So I know about 6:30 on my boat, I noticed a surge of water coming from the channel at the yacht club. And this was creating an eddy and almost a whirlpool, perhaps, I say another 150 meters in diameter with perhaps half-meter chop on it. Very unusual. And shortly after that, I noticed the boats, including the flotilla of derelict longliners, and there are probably 30 small ships out there anchored, and they started shifting. We all started shifting, and it ended up, it seemed like a cycle every 15 minutes. We would shift 180 degrees as I came to realize the tide was going up and down. We couldn't tell about the tide in the dark. And this went on, I think, until from 6:30 to 8:30. And another man from another harbor called me, noticed the same thing, so I knew it was real. And I became a little nervous about these ships breaking loose as they twisted up their chains down to what I know to be wrecks, where they're tied to. Luckily, there were no accidents or incidents. We rode it out, and it's another good story.
This was the Fijian capital, Suva. Huge waves crashed on shore and flooded some areas.
Come in the patio. Seriously.
Good yourself.
That's my boat behind. We had no warning at all. There was no alarms or anything.
There's no warning from civil defence, nothing, no sirens.
People were running down the piers, banging on their boats, telling them to get out. They had no idea that this was happening. And they popped their heads out of their boat to see a red catamaran going over the top of my boat. Yeah, literally took the flybridge clean off it as it went over the top. So that is a force of nature that is incredible.
It didn't take long to get here, so there was no warning. I didn't know about it happening, otherwise I would have come down here, checked the boat. But the good thing is nothing happened to the boat. The boat's all fine, so it's all good. But just think about tsunamis, pretty nasty. You can tell from my nervous voice that I could have been crying instead of smiling. We're very lucky in Suva. The tsunami sank boats in Japan and New Zealand, and we're so close to Tonga, on a direct path from the volcanic eruption. It's amazing and unexplainable why we didn't get hit with more intensity. It just makes you think, yeah, about tsunamis and how quickly they can happen. Now let's get back out in the water. I was feeling optimistic, so I removed the lazy jacks. As you can see, the first try, some of the sail spilt over. So well, back to the marina for another modification. I just put a single lazy jack line and it helped letting the sail down. I think I'll muck around with different configurations till I'm happy. It could even be, you know, I'll just stow away the lazy jacks when hoisting the sail and then put them back when we're letting it down. It might not have worked out good enough to eliminate the lazy jacks that I'd hoped, but I have to tackle each project with optimism or I just wouldn't do it. The boom bracket is a good addition to the boat to hold the weight of the mainsail, and it will be useful even as a handhold while foiling the sail. I wanted to end this video with some nice sailing shots, but unfortunately I've got some problems with the hydraulic keel that needs to be fixed, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, happy sailing.